Right to Water addresses the issue of water access for Palestinian refugee camps in Amman and their potentials to achieve water independence through rainwater local collection and storage. For 70 years, hundreds of thousands of Palestinians who were forcibly displaced from Palestine in 1948 have been living in permanent temporariness in refugee camps in Jordan. The hope that refugees will be returning to Palestine have shaped the experience and architecture of the camps. These camps developed a unique identity around the notion of the right to return, which has been often utilized to justify the marginalization of the camp and their limited access to resources like water, electricity, and proper sanitation. The status of Palestinian refugee camps puts them at a critical condition in the light of Jordan's water crisis, leaving them at the risk of losing adequate access to water in the likely condition of the government no longer subsidizing water. Starting with the regional context, Jordan faces huge challenges trying to supply fresh water to its residents. Over the second half of the last century, Jordan has resorted to several national large-scale water infrastructure projects to drag water from distant areas to Amman and the other major Jordanian cities. The flow of refugees from neighboring countries increased the pressure on the water supply of the country as the population grew to nearly 9.6 million residents, one-third of which are forcibly displaced populations. However, Jordan has the capacity to benefit from rainwater collection to supply water to some of its most vulnerable settlements, like Palestinian refugee camps. Some camps could supply up to 80% of their needs with rainwater collection only. The concept of microcollection is inspired by the camp's built form. Instead of having one large central pipe coming from the city water authority as the sole provider of water to the camp, the project aims to create a network of hundreds of smaller pipes, moving the water from numerous local collection points to the units of the camps directly. Taking a closer look at Al Hussein camp built environment, we realize the potential for such a system due to the organic growth of the camp over time, which created negative spaces between the buildings that could be used as water storage spaces. The gradual development and growth of the camp also created different levels of privacy, from Main Street to the alleys and negative spaces. The camp sits on a sloped topography, and the built form acts like a second topography that diverts rainwater into different areas based on elevation, which creates the opportunity to convert these points into water reservoirs and shared community spaces. The project's goal is to capitalize on the uniqueness of the camp-built environment and its organic growth to implement micro rainwater capture infrastructure that allows the camp to achieve water independence. The concept is based on our understanding of the urban fabric as a second topography that diverts rainwater and that could be manipulated and molded to control the runoff and accumulation to maximize the water storage. This chain of diversion, consolidation, filtration, accumulation, storage, and use is achieved through a series of objects that can be implemented in the existing urban fabric. Looking at the sample block in a Hussein refugee camp, we see the diversion starting with pieces of fabric that act as deflectors, fixed at the top of buildings to direct water into local storage spaces, both fixed and foldable spaces, which can later be linked through aqueducts which carry the overflow into larger storage volumes. These large storage masses act as bases for future vertical growth for the units themselves. And thus, a hierarchy of water flow is created between the higher roofs and the lower reservoirs that correlates with the shades of privacy within the singular block itself. The interventions are intended to be embedded in the urban fabric without the need to demolish and replace existing structures in order to add the new water infrastructure. The supporting columns that hold the deflectors are placed strategically to accommodate future vertical growth of the camp, as horizontal growth is restricted by the dense surrounding neighborhoods. While acting as elements of the proposed water system, deflectors also provide shaded spaces to activate the roofs of the block structures and create a much-needed open private space for families and communities. By taking a section across the block through the central proposed intervention, the water reservoir can be seen underneath the open shared space, which is intended to accommodate a shared community kitchen, an open performance space, a kindergarten, and a semi-public gathering area. Lastly, taking a section through the system, we come to understand the links between the individual elements that come together to form a larger unit that ensures equal access to all residents of the block. The project building phases reflect the stakeholders' involvement, starting with a singular unit and continuing to build up the collective shared parts of the system in collaboration with local NGOs, local authorities, and international aid agencies in charge of the camp systems, like the UNRWA and the Department of Palestinian Affairs. The right to water is a concept that is intended to be replicated not only on the local scale within the camp, but also across other camps and dense working-class neighborhoods in Amman to reduce pressure on the Jordanian water infrastructure and allow for future water independence.